if you've ever used Planned Parenthood for abortion resources, PlannedParenthood.com, your data might have been accessed by a third-party company. Planned Parenthood did just this week end any practices that allowed for market data research or an access to any of its data. So rest assured that's ending now, but the alarm bells were going off for a while, and it is not a good week to have third-party companies accessing data of people seeking abortions, obviously. It was probably never a good idea in the first place. Now we know this because there was an investigation by Lockdown Privacy, which is an app that stops that kind of tracking, and they detailed that Planned Parenthood, for example, was sharing this kind of information with Google, TikTok, Hotjar, things like an IP address, a site visited, behavior on the site, reason for visiting, user selected method of abortion, the time zone, your zip code, time stamp, whether you came to Planned Parenthood through a search engine or you typed it in directly, client ID. I mean, honestly, all stuff that on a regular day surfing the internet, let's be real, most of us are getting our data tracked around. Now, this is just another reason why we need protections as citizens, as people who use the internet, as people who want autonomy over our own bodies. But Lockdown Privacy said, and this was from the founder, says it was shocking. We analyzed and reviewed the tracking behaviors of hundreds of apps and websites. It's rare to see this degree of carelessness with sensitive health data. Let's give Planned Parenthood a chance to weigh in. So let's jump to graphic 4. They said, let's be clear, no scheduling or protected health information, PHI, has been breached. Out of an abundance of caution, Planned Parenthood will suspend marketing pixels on web pages related to abortion searches and will be engaging with Meta/Facebook and other technology companies about how their policies can better protect people seeking abortion care. Now, I just wanna remind everyone that this is also a week that Meta and Facebook have been scrubbing the posts of organizations like Planned Parenthood, organizations that are trying to either raise money for or get resources on how to still obtain an abortion, how to get the Plan C pill sent to you if you live in a state where abortion's been banned. Those have been scrubbed. And a lot of that has to do with, God, who knows, but them trying to avoid any kind of liability if they are at the other receiving end of a lawsuit, because they don't have the money. They're just Meta and Google. But I wanted to get you guys' initial thoughts before I give you sort of like why this matters, why this is so important.
Yeah, so there's as usual a couple of issues here. First, HIPAA is a law that's supposed to protect your medical privacy. So if they go to Planned Parenthood without a court order and they say, all right, give me their medical files, Planned Parenthood can say no. Even with a court order, they might be able to say no. It's a little bit complicated, that particular law, but it's pretty strong protections. But if you're going to Planned Parenthood's website or any other website and they have these trackers that almost all the sites have, then other people can then get around HIPAA and just grab that information from the third parties because of the way that the internet works. And so that is not protected by HIPAA. That is why this is an issue. But it's an issue only because we now live in, well, at least some of us do, in fascist states. So where they would say, oh, what is a woman doing? Oh, she's going to do something to her own body we don't want her to have that freedom. The state now owns their body and will tell them what to do with it. Oh my God, we found a way to track them so we could track their every movement. And then if we think they're doing something to their body that the government, the tyrannical government has decided they're not allowed to do to their body, we'll snatch them up, put them in jail, and make sure we take their freedom away for good. None of this would ever be an issue if the right wing wasn't fascist to begin with and trying to take away women's freedoms and literally use their bodies for government purpose.
In 2015, Julia Angwin published a book called Dragnet Nation. And in it, I mean, this was several years ago now, she warned about future problems with mass data collection in the private sector, because Congress, as you all know and viewers all know, is very slow to catch up with developing technology, and they often don't understand it. I would say a majority of Congress doesn't understand most social media platforms in general, let alone the data collection behind it. But she talked about as it intersects with health data, it's totally different, because you can just apply a couple different layers of data from different data brokers and you can find out exactly who that person is online. And I checked to see if she had written about anything in this world, and she has recently, so I'd encourage people to read it. But she said there are anti-choice groups geofencing clinics like Planned Parenthood clinics and other abortion clinics, and targeting people in those clinics with false information and ads, trying to dissuade them from exercising their own bodily autonomy. That is such an invasive tactic for a deeply personal decision. And again, Congress could regulate how companies can access your health data and how they can sell it and deal with it and whatever. But the problem is they don't understand it. We have a really slow, archaic Congress.
And to speak to both of those points, the idea that this is a right-wing tactic and the idea that Congress doesn't know what they're talking about when it comes to the internet, I wanted to point you guys to a little bit more information. So the National Right to Life Committee has released model legislation that criminalizes providing or hosting information or assistance on how to get a medical abortion. It specifically says that anti-choice laws must be written to prevent state residents from seeking abortions in states where it is legal to do so, and this law is likely to pass in several states. In other words, we're going to put the clamp down on the information spreading, which happens through the internet. Anyone utilizing that information, putting in their own information in order to prevent people from traveling to states where abortion is still legal. And again, we know that this is something the Biden administration, the one thing that they're trying to combat against is protecting the right of people to travel. But it speaks to, and let's jump down to graphic 7, about the ways that we misunderstand Section 230, which has been used. It is really the last line of defense, according to this article, in keeping reproductive health care support, information, and fundraising online that does not provide immunity if the platform develops or creates content, and it does not provide immunity from the enforcement of federal criminal laws, but crucially, it does protect against criminal liability from state laws. Okay, so that was a little muddled, but the idea is it is something that even Democrats have taken aim at, because they believe, for example, in the FOSTA-SESTA bill that was trying to combat human trafficking, supposedly, that because these sites were hosting back pages or ads for escorts, that they were contributing to trafficking of minors, et cetera, and human trafficking. So that's why we need to get rid of Section 230 to hold the platforms accountable. But no, in fact, people, including sex workers, and now you see in reproductive health, they're like, no, Section 230 is super critical, because that way the platforms like Google, like Facebook, they don't face lawsuits. They can say, look, this is people spreading information about healthcare, and you can't come after us. States can't criminalize us for hosting this kind of information, and we then don't have this sort of ridiculous thing to rest on when we scrub posts as they're doing right now.
Yeah, look, I know Section 230 sounds arcane. You're like literally referring to a very specific section in a giant bill, but it's super important. It means that any website, if you take it away, will be liable for anything that any of their users say. So if someone on Facebook, on gigantic Facebook, puts up a post saying, hey, this is where you can get an abortion, or you can get an abortion pill, they can say, nope, that's it, it's Facebook's fault. Now Facebook owes the state of Texas billions of dollars. Well, what's Facebook gonna do? Or any website? They're gonna say, no, that's it, clamp down. We're not going to have any information that could help people, because the red states have made it criminal to help people. So we're gonna end all user comments. It would destroy the internet. And there's honestly a bunch of total idiot Democrats in several different laws who are trying to take away some of the protection of Section 230. Idiots, don't do that. You'll destroy the internet if you do that. Now back to Republicans. So understand what they're doing. They're now using the internet to spy in on every part of your life, trying to catch if you did something with your own body that the government doesn't want. I mean, you want to talk about the tyranny of government? The right wing is constantly talking about, oh, if a government tyranny comes, man, I'm gonna murder everybody. What are you talking about? You are government tyranny. And get a load of these fascists who say, oh, if you made the mistake of ever living in a red state, we're gonna track you no matter where you go. We're gonna track you in other states, we're gonna track you in other countries, and we're gonna imprison you because you made the terrible mistake of living in a red state. And we're just gonna make sure that you could never exercise freedom over your own body. It's disgusting.
Because we believe in small government.
Yeah, small government, my ass. All of you Republicans admit right now that you love big government. You love it. Even if you don't think it's tyrannical. You're like, no, I have to protect zygotes. Zygotes are the most important people that aren't people. Okay, fine. But you can't say that it isn't big government to say you can't decide what to do with your body. The government, giant government, decides what to do with your body, and we track you down if you ever disagree with the government and put you in jail if you ever dare to try to go to a state that has freedom.
I think Fran's point about Sesta Fosta is a good one. And I want to remind people that only one Democrat in the Senate voted against it, and that was Ron Wyden. And he's pretty good on tech bills because he hired somebody who used to be at the ACLU who is just a technologist. That's his entire life, is just thinking about these things critically. Christopher Soghoian, who I admire and respect greatly, just has advised him on all of these bills, so he's making smart votes. No other Democrat voted no on it, and that, like Fran said, it pushed sex workers into much more unsafe situations because they couldn't vet their clients anymore. So however you feel about sex work in general, we don't want people to be in danger because of a dumb move by Congress. But that's the consequence of not having people who understand what they're dealing with legislating on these issues.
Yeah, I have to bring in two more pieces of context before we leave this story. Just so you guys know, the Department of Health and Human Services this week did issue a statement sort of clarifying that, and Cenk alluded to this earlier, but in the absence of a mandate enforceable in a court of law, and in the absence of sort of basically a court order to get your medical records, the privacy rules permission to disclose protected health information for law enforcement purposes does not permit the disclosure to law enforcement where a hospital or other healthcare provider's workforce member chose to report an individual's abortion or other reproductive healthcare. So there's no requirement from healthcare workers to report an abortion or alleged abortion. So they clarified that. Sadly, they also clarified something else, and this is what we're talking about. We're talking about internet data, we're talking about our privacy. The department warned patients that data collected by third-party apps, such as period trackers, such as potentially Planned Parenthood, is not protected health information under federal rules and could be shared with other entities. Guys, I'm pregnant right now. I have Flow. It's an app. You like track the baby. You're like, the baby is big as a corn on a cob or something stupid like that. And I'm terrified. Where you're like, these are apps that regularly feed third-party entities all of your data. So of course I'm not going to use it anymore. As cute as that is, to know that this is the size of a corn on the cob.
No, I gotta say one last thing here. Francesca and anyone else who's pregnant, do not travel to a red state. And because Franny's planning to have the baby, and that's a great choice. But what if something goes wrong? What if you have health complications later, and you have to take some normal medical procedure? If you went through a red state, they could track you through the apps and then potentially look to imprison you because you made the disastrous decision to step foot in a fascist state that doesn't allow you to control your own body.
Yeah.
No, these are super scary times.
Yes, very much so. Everyone donate to abortionfunds.org, please.
Yeah.
There's a fundraiser happening tomorrow. Adriana Vega's friend of ours and TYT's is doing a fundraiser for the Texas Equal Access Fund. If you go to protectabortionrights.com, you can donate now.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.